Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of Retire Well, the show that's designed to help you retire well in all aspects of your life. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, and joining me in the studio is Kevin Bucher. He is the co-founder and a financial advisor at Citizen Advisory Group. And Kevin, I'm excited to do the show with you today, as I always am. We had a jam-packed show last week, and we're going to piggyback and kind of pick up where we left off, right?
Yes, part two.
Yes.
We got pretty far into it, but there is still a lot of meat left on the bone for this.
Absolutely. This is part two of proactive financial planning. And if you missed last week's show, actually good news for you. There's a QR code there on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. You can actually scan that QR code, and that will take you over to a site where you can actually watch last week's episode and previous episodes as well. So I want to re-presence just for folks if they're joining us for the first time this week. You did a great job last week of just setting up what it means to engage in that proactive, comprehensive, holistic financial planning process, which is what you all specialize in doing.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks feel a little bit helpless because maybe they don't understand some of the complexities
it's
around
overwhelming, right?
Yeah, there's so much to it, and you know, there's not an easy course to pick up, and I also recognize that there's not a lot of folks out there that might have the passion for some of the things that we plan around.
That we have to nerd out about, right?
Yes. So, you know, a great example of that is the taxes, which we're going to dive into the taxes as part of today's show. But maybe everyone doesn't have the same passion for tax planning that I do. Right. But I think everyone recognizes the importance of it. And, you know, it's interesting. I do a live workshop presentation on taxes. And one of the things we usually talk about is, you know, how do you feel about the current taxes? And there's never really been anyone that's raised their hand and said, I think I pay the exact right amount of taxes. Most people feel like they are overpaying in taxes. And then similarly, when we talk about the future of taxes, I've never in 16 years had someone say, yeah, I think taxes will be lower in the future, right? So we've got massive debt issues, and the prospects for lower tax rate in the future doesn't look real good. So taxes are one of those areas that, hey, we have some control over. But yeah, there's a lot of complexities to this. We need to take control of these things, and that's what this segment's all about, is being proactive in some of these planning areas.
Absolutely. Well, let's review for our viewers the 5 key areas, the 5 checkpoint areas, if you will, of that comprehensive financial plan.
Yeah, so we got investment management, and that was what we spent the bulk of the previous show talking about, as far as how can you maybe take a little bit less risk in your portfolio. We were able to just briefly touch on the investment fees.
Yes, and I know you'd love to continue that conversation, so let's talk about that quickly.
Yeah, so let me just kind of give an example of some folks we work with. So, you know, we work with some folks that recently came in from another advisor, and the advisor was basically charging them a 1% advisor fee, and they felt like that was fair based on their situation, and they weren't really questioning that.
Right.
But what they were missing is that it's not just the cost of the advisor, because you have the advisor cost, but then there's the cost of the investments that are in your portfolio. So if that's a mutual fund, you have the internal expenses of the fund. If you have some variable annuities loaded in there, there's potentially pretty high cost inside variable annuities. So you really have to look at the investments in the portfolio and what are the all-in cost of these things. And for this individual couple, when we put that all together for them, the advisor was charging the average cost of all of their funds and some of the variable annuity products they had, they were paying about 2.5% in fees.
Wow, and didn't even realize that, I bet. That's common for a lot of folks.
Yes, so we were able to kind of put together an alternative portfolio for them. They acknowledged that there was a much more comprehensive approach. We were doing a lot more planning work than they were currently getting, and we were able to cut their fees in more than half to do that same work. So fees are something that we have to be sensitive to. So we have control over that, but we have to understand them.
For sure. Well, and I love that you talked about this last week too, but the question that someone should always ask anyone they're working with is, what is the total cost I will incur from working with you? Because that's the only way you're going to be able to uncover a lot of these other fees to find out what that total cost actually is.
Yes, and sometimes, unfortunately, I'm not sure the advisors always know what the total cost of the funds, because they're just not as cost sensitive.
Right.
So with the licensing that we hold as a fiduciary, we have to be very cost sensitive. We do have to disclose those fees.
Absolutely. Be transparent with them.
Very transparent, and we have to disclose if there's any conflicts of interest loaded in there.
Right.
So that is important to understand who you're working with and make sure you're getting the full information as far as what the fees are.
Absolutely. Well, I know we want to get to the other 4 areas of the 5. So let's go through quickly what they are, and then we'll unpack each one.
Yeah, so the retirement planning. So we have some control over securing an income stream for us that has some lifetime guarantees around it. Taxes, we've already hit on that, where we have some control over our long-term tax liability by doing some forward-looking tax planning. Risk management, so making sure that, number one, you have adequate coverage around the areas of health insurance, long-term care insurance, life insurance, home and auto insurance, but also controlling your cost. So being a diligent shopper, making sure that you're looking and getting your insurance coverage at the most affordable price. And if you do that, that's just putting more money in your pocket and in your portfolio for your future retirement years.
Right.
And then the fifth and final area, I'm sorry, there's so much to this.
No, it's great.
It's making sure your legal affairs are in order, that your estate is in order, that you have
critical.
Proper beneficiary designations on your accounts, that you have your medical directives in place should you have an illness that makes it so that you're not in the capacity to do that.
Right.
And then if you have the need for a trust or a will, making sure that you have all that in all your affairs in order.
Right. Absolutely. So critical. All this goes into a well-done financial plan, a comprehensive, holistic financial plan. And we're going to get into some of these other areas. But before we do, I know we're going to go to commercial, but can you share a little bit about this complimentary tax report that our viewers are going to receive when they call the number today?
Yeah, so I think too often people feel like taxes are what they are. And there's not really any strategy involved in when and how you choose to pay your taxes. So one of the tools that we utilize provides this tax report. So it actually reads the current tax return, evaluates your current tax liability. So it really gives us a really good snapshot of where you are currently. It highlights some key planning areas that you need to consider currently, but it also provides observations of things that we need to be aware of moving forward into the future, with the goal being to reduce the long-term tax liability so that you're keeping more of your hard-earned money.
So critical. I think a lot of folks think that, taxes, as you said, are just the way that they are, but did you know that the tax code was actually written to help you pay the least amount of tax possible? We want you to be able to pay less to the IRS. This is not about tax evasion. What we are talking about is mitigating your tax liability. So if you would like a copy of your own complimentary tax report, again, this is individualized, personalized, and customized to you for no cost, no charge, no obligation. All you need to do is call that number on the bottom of your screen, 866-630-1675. You're also welcome to take out your smartphone. You can simply open up that camera app and just point it right there at that QR code in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. That will take you over to a landing page, ask you a few short, simple questions, and then a member of the team from Citizen Advisory Group will be able to reach out to you, connect with you, and schedule your complimentary visit that way as well. And as we mentioned, if you want to catch up on last week's show or any previous episodes, scanning that QR code will get you there too. But don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're going to be diving into the second pillar of this comprehensive financial plan, retirement income planning. Stay with us.
I think we recognize as a firm that thought of meeting with a financial advisor and discussing your personal finances causes some anxiety.
It can be kind of overwhelming or intimidating for some.
It's similar to the emotions I have about the dentist. I recognize that going to the dentist is really important. I want better dental health. I don't look forward to going to the dentist. But what I have found is it ends up not being as bad as what I thought. I think that relates really well to those emotions that people have about meeting with a financial advisor, that it might cause some anxiety, but it wasn't nearly as bad as you thought. And when it's all said and done, you feel so much more comfortable about the steps you took and the financial security that you're building for yourself.
We have a beautiful home office in Perrysburg that we built with intentionality. We want to try to take down those walls to make it home. When you come into our living room, the fireplace and couches, and when people come in, we want to have that comfort level of family and trust and open communication, just all the things that are important to be successful.
Welcome back. You're watching Retire Well with Kevin Bucher, co-founder and financial advisor at Citizen Advisory Group. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, and we are talking today about engaging in proactive financial planning. This is kind of a part 2, if you will. We had a very jam-packed show last week where we focused in depth on investment management. We're going to talk now about this second component of the 5 areas that you do of this checkpoint review for folks. That's retirement income planning.
Yes. huge critical component. And I refer to this, the retirement income planning, as the glue that holds all the pieces together.
It's all about income, right?
Because it really connects everything.
Yes.
So like we've already talked a lot about taxes, and the whole third segment of our show today is going to be on taxes. So don't tune out. We're going to make it fun and exciting. So it's really hard to do the tax work without having the retirement income plan.
So true.
Because I need to be able to understand what our income is going to look like in the future so that I can do these tax projections that are going to compare the current tax year to some of these future tax years. So I really have to have the retirement income plan to do some of the tax planning. And it's so beneficial in other ways, because once I've laid out the retirement income plan, it helps us make decisions about what should we do with Social Security, because we can look at different scenarios and how it affects and impacts the overall plan. It helps us evaluate our life insurance. So if we're holding existing life insurance, do we still need to carry that life insurance? Or do we maybe we're underinsured and we need to have some extra insurance to protect a surviving spouse in the event of one of us passing?
Right.
So it connects so many of the areas together. I hate that we call it the second pillar, because it really is where our planning process starts. So retirement income planning, we have to secure an income stream.
Yes.
And that starts by asking the two fundamental questions: how much income will you need for the necessities? And then how much income do you want to fund your desired lifestyle?
Right. The needs and the wants.
Yes.
Yes.
And from a how do we solve for those two things? It's going to take different approaches. And I think it's really important that for those necessities, we are utilizing resources that are very stable, provide a lot of certainty to the plan, and sometimes have some guarantees behind them. So that are going to be our resources like Social Security, pensions, and then lifetime income strategies out of annuities.
Right.
So annuities are something that can provide a guaranteed income stream. There's multiple ways that an annuity can do that. But for some folks, that's a really viable solution if they're looking to increase their guaranteed income that's secured and guaranteed for life.
And if they're using the right annuity to get that job done, because you and I both know that all annuities are created equal, right?
Yeah, there's a vast difference, different types of annuities in the marketplace. Some of them come with no additional fee. Some of them come with a fee in the 3 to 4% range. Some of them provide no liquidity. Some of them. So yes, you need to evaluate the annuity, but it's very important that we evaluate the company that's issuing that annuity, because there is a promise or a guarantee that comes with that annuity. So it's the insurance company that is standing behind that guaranteed promise. So we need to make sure that they have the financial wherewithal themselves to make good on that promise. So we have to evaluate that as well.
Absolutely. Well, I know that you work with folks all the time, and you had shared with me during the break that you have a great story that I really want the viewers to be able to hear of how you've been able to walk someone through this process. Yeah,
so I think the example I want to give is kind of specific to the area of Social Security planning. So Kyle and Renee came in, and there's a pretty big age difference between the two of them. It's about a 12-year age gap. So Kyle has already exited the workforce, and he was in his early 60s. Renee, not exited the workforce yet, still planning on working for several years.
Right.
So, but Kyle was of the age where he could file for his Social Security. And so he was considering, is it the right time for me to take my Social Security? They actually were working with an advisor prior to meeting with us.
Okay.
That really gave them just pretty loose response to that question.
The bare bones, right? Like, oh, you're 62, you can go ahead and start claiming, right?
Yes, and there wasn't a whole lot of evaluation. There wasn't really looking at the difference of these strategies over the long term. And basically the advice was, it doesn't really make a difference.
Wow.
And so the reality, though, is it makes a huge difference, especially in their individual circumstances with the large age gap.
Right.
So Kyle was the higher earner of the two. So his Social Security record is going to provide a higher benefit than that of Renee. So again, the advice was, go ahead and take your Social Security because it doesn't make a difference. Whereas our approach was a little different. We were recommending delaying, but we were able to show them a side-by-side comparison of these two strategies over the course of their projected lifetime.
Right.
Now, no one knows how long they're going to live.
Right. If we did, this make the whole Social Security conversation a whole lot easier,
yeah,
right?
it would really just make it a straight math equation from that point on. But in their case, they do have some, the expectation that they're going to have some longevity, in particular Renee. So there's a good family history. Her health is good. So she was projecting that she was going to live into her 90s, which in today's world is not that uncommon.
It's not
right?
unheard of at all, right?
Yeah. I think the statistics are for a 65-year-old couple that more than half, there's at least one of them is going to live into their 90s. So there's a very realistic expectation. So when you run out her life expectancy to age 90 and you compare these different filing dates for them,
Right.
the difference over the course of their lifetime, you might expect it to be tens of thousands of dollars, but the reality was it was close to $500,000 difference in Social Security benefits.
Which is over $500,000 difference.
Yeah, so think about what that would look like to the bottom line of this household, that if they were getting $500,000 more from Social Security over their lifetime, what would that mean to their investment accounts? How much would they likely have left for them to either spend themselves or to pass on to their heirs? So, the whole securing your income starts with Social Security, and I think that just highlights how vastly different the starting points, the impact that can make.
Sure.
Now, everyone's situation is different. For some, I wish there was just a blanket answer that we could give everyone.
But it depends, right?
It absolutely depends on your individual circumstances, what your needs are, your resources, what is the right thing for you.
Right.
So when it comes to securing your income, I would sum it up in the following way.
Okay.
And I wish I could say I coined part of this phrase, but I didn't. So on one hand, we need to secure a paycheck
Yes.
that you're going to live off of to meet your necessities, while also having a play check.
A play check. I love that because we want to help you do the things you want to do in retirement, right? It's not about what you can't do. It's about what you can do and making that a reality.
Yeah, that's the fun stuff, right? So we have the necessities. So that's the paycheck. We want a play check so we can go do the fun stuff,
Right.
while still making sure that we have the paycheck that's going to be there for the rest of your life. And ideally, we're not going to have to apply all of our funds to create the paycheck and play check for you, because we want there to be some discretionary assets still available to deal with what I would call spending shocks. So spending shocks, they're not always bad things. They might be something that you choose to do, like a big family trip that
Right. Once in a lifetime vacation.
once in a lifetime vacation.
Right.
So it's not always bad things, but spending shocks usually are more associated with something unexpected that came up, an unexpected expense.
When I needed to replace 2 tires a couple weeks ago. Oops, right?
Yeah, whether it was 2 tires,
Right.
the roof on your house,
The refrigerator, AC goes out, you name it.
and life happens.
It does.
So if we've structured this properly, we have an income stream for the paycheck that you can count on month after month after month to meet your basic necessities. We have a play check that allows you to feel free to go out and spend and enjoy some dollars while still having that nest egg squirreled away for the what ifs of life that we know are coming. We don't know what they are.
Exactly. We just know that they're going to happen.
We know they're coming.
And that provides such peace of mind when you don't have to stay up and stress and wonder where your next paycheck is coming from. We've probably all experienced that at some point in our lives, but you don't want to be experiencing that, especially when you're in your retirement years and you're living on that fixed income.
Yeah, because when things go south with the retirement income, I can't say this with certainty because I'm not there yet, but I wouldn't suspect that the job market looks real good for a 75 to 80-year-old
Right.
who has been out of the workforce for 15 to 20 years, right? So
For sure.
we can't have that be part of the plan. We need to make sure that there's enough stability and security so that doesn't happen.
Exactly. If you're working, it's because we want you to be only doing it if you want to continue working, not because you have to, and that's the difference.
Yes.
Well, I know we're going to go to another quick break, but talk one more time about this complimentary tax report that they're going to get, because I know we're going to dive more deeply into taxes when we come back.
Yeah, so we've got this secured income, we got the paycheck, we got the play check, but we got to keep as much of that for ourselves as we can.
Right.
So a lot of times we see folks that the bulk of their dollars are tied up inside of their pre-tax retirement accounts. So how do we get the money out of that pre-taxed account into your hands at the lowest tax rates possible? And that's where this tax report comes in. So it reads the current tax year. It gives us some side-by-side information about some tax things that we should be looking at today to try to reduce the tax liability, programs that you may be available for that you're not aware of. But it also gives us observations for things that we need to be aware of for the future so that we can get out in front of the tax man and hopefully pay the least amount possible over the course of our lifetime when it comes to taxes.
Kevin, thank you so much. To our viewers at home, that number to call to get your own complimentary tax report, 866-630-1675. Or again, you're welcome to scan that QR code down in the right-hand corner of your screen, and that will take you over to a landing page, ask you a few short, simple questions, and a member of the team will reach out and connect with you to schedule your complimentary visit and to get your complimentary tax report that way as well. When we come back, we're going to be diving more deeply into this tax discussion. Stay with us.
As a good saver, you've been putting away money during your working years. Studies find that the biggest fear of retirees is running out of money. Market volatility isn't just the downward movement of stock prices, it's the size and frequency of change. The more dramatic the ups and downs, the higher the volatility. This can put savers who are newly retired or a few years away from being retired at greater risk. Today's generation of retirees is not receiving traditional pensions as our parents or grandparents did. Instead, we have retirement accounts such as 401ks or 403bs. These accounts typically expose your money to market risk. The last thing you want right before retirement is to lose a portion of the money you need for income. But how do you turn these accounts into a retirement income? Is it safe to keep all your retirement money sitting in the stock market? The last thing you want is to lose a portion of the money you need for income due to market loss. By working with a financial professional, you can learn how to turn a portion of your savings into an income stream for life and income for the life of your spouse if you're married. We all have moments in our lives when we wish we had taken action sooner. Don't let procrastination reign on your retirement parade. Act now before it's too late. Please call our office to set up your no-cost, no-obligation retirement income review today.
Welcome back to Retire Well with Kevin Bucher. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley. We are talking today about proactive financial planning, and it's time to talk more in depth about engaging in strategic tax planning, because at the end of the day, it's not so much about how much you have, it's how much you get to keep that makes the difference. And that's really what it comes to in this discussion, is helping folks mitigate their tax liability.
Yeah, so how exciting is this about to be to talk about taxes?
I think it's very exciting when you know what's coming, right?
Yeah, so if you've hung in there with us, I think the easiest way to kind of walk through some of the tax planning and strategies, just to use actual real examples. So I have a whole list here, as promised. We're going to make this as hopefully as exciting as we possibly can, because it is taxes after all. But so let's start with Marty and Kathy.
Okay.
I've talked in the past about the importance of diversification, not just in your investments, but also having some tax diversification. So this is an example of, okay, unfortunately, Marty and Kathy did not have a lot of tax diversification. So as a retiree, Marty and Kathy, they both retired with pensions, so that's kind of rare, but they had a really nice income base from their pensions. Marty and Kathy also had full Social Security benefits.
Okay.
So pensions plus Social Security created a really nice income from them.
Right.
But at the same time, they had saved and accumulated some investments, and it was 100% in pre-tax retirement accounts.
So tax deferred, also known as qualified accounts, same as pre-tax again.
So the challenge of that, it's not a bad thing, mind you. It's just a challenge, and it is what it is. So the challenge that they ran into is that they've already eaten up their standard deduction. They've already eaten up the 10% tax bracket and the 12% tax bracket, and they're in the 22% tax bracket before they ever even think about taking a withdrawal from their portfolio. So every dollar they take from their portfolio is going to be taxed at the 22 or higher federal income tax rate.
Right.
So what they ran into was that they had a household project that they had been waiting to do, and they wanted to replace their windows.
Okay. Oh, that's a big job.
That was a big job, especially because they live in an older historic house, and it's a custom job.
Wow.
And so when they went to replace their windows, I believe the bill was somewhere around $50,000 to replace the windows in their house. And the problem is they only have pre-tax money. So when they need $50,000, we're not going to take $50,000 from their portfolio because we have to account for the taxes of that. So by the time you put that all together, they not only were paying 22% income tax, it actually threw them over some other tiers that we have to be aware of when it comes to tax planning. So I think a lot of people are unaware that Medicare has premium tiers based on your income.
IRMA, right?
It's called the IRMA, Income Related Monthly Adjustment Amount, IRMA. And so by taking this withdrawal, it threw them up over to where they were now paying not just the taxes at 22%, federal plus
Right.
state taxes,
Sure.
they were also now subject to higher Medicare premiums.
Yes, they go up. That's the
Yes.
problem.
So that just kind of highlights the importance of having the tax diversification, because if they had built some tax diversification and they had a Roth account, for example, when they needed that $50,000 for the window, we could have taken some money from pre-tax, some money from the Roth, and avoided that IRMA threshold for them.
Yes, because I've heard that. Folks will all of a sudden, they get their Medicare premiums in the mail and they find out they've gone up. They have no idea why. Well, maybe they sold a second home. Maybe they had this, douse of income come in, and that affects, it just speaks to how we talk about how one thing can affect all the others.
Yes. So in this specific example, we knew that this was happening, so we were able to communicate it with them, and they were able to make the choice. Okay, do we move forward with the window project? Do we split it over multiple years? They ultimately decided to go ahead and do the window project, but they were at least informed of some of the consequences of that.
Right. Yeah.
Okay?
So important.
Moving on to another example.
All right.
George and Ann. So we've touched on George and Ann in the past. So they retired both with Social Security. Their Social Security was high. Because of how Social Security is taxed, they were actually paying no federal income taxes.
Wow.
Great. But they were missing something because they too were sitting on a lot of pre-taxed money. And when their RMD started, required minimum distributions at the age of 73, it took them from paying no tax to paying 25% tax when you factor in the expiration of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So they not only are not paying, they're paying tax on their RMD, but it dragged in tax on those Social Security benefits. So they went from no tax to high tax.
Yep.
So from a planning perspective, we want to start to de-tax those pre-taxed accounts as early as we can at the lowest rates possible.
Right.
So for them, if they're going to be in the 25% tax bracket later, well, that means we should take advantage of the 10 and 12% tax brackets today and start taking dollars out through Roth conversions at the 10 and 12% tax, de-taxing their
Right.
pre-taxed accounts.
Absolutely. Well, gosh, and Social Security, a lot of people don't realize that up to 85% of your benefit can be taxed. And this is why it's so important to look at all these components and how they fit together.
Yeah, so when that RMD kicked in, they went from a very small portion of their Social Security being taxed to 85% of it being
Wow.
taxed,
What a
plus the RMD
switch.
amount,
Yeah.
which is what threw them into that 25% tax.
Right.
So
a lot at
we
once.
got through a couple tax examples, Kristen. I'm
There's
so proud.
so many more, yes.
That to close, I just want to make sure that it's more than just taxes. We want to make sure we don't forget about the insurance, getting the coverage we need, lowest rates possible, and making sure that you get your estate in order so that you have your family set up for long-term success as well.
I'm so grateful that Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan has you and the team at Citizen Advisory Group to help them navigate through all of this. So thank you so much, Kevin. To our viewers at home, thank you so much for watching. We look forward to being back with you next week.